There's Sibiwe. Sibiwe,
Hi, Stephen.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you all?
Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having
Hi.
me.
Mm.
Hi, Annette. Hi,
Hi,
Anissa.
Thebe.
Okay, so we're just going to wait a few minutes and then we'll get started. We're waiting for people to enter the room and then we can get going. I think people are being fashionably late. Okay, everyone, if you've just joined us, I'm going to wait 2 more minutes and then we'll get started. So please be patient and thank you for joining us. I see we have Alexander in the crew, in the crowd. Thank you for joining us. One of our previous spring session guests. Okay, thank you, everyone. I think we'll get started. So I want to welcome you all to our Stadio School of Fashion Spring Sessions, The Rise of African Fashion. I am absolutely excited to have three legends of the local South African fashion and actually global African fashion scene here with us today. And we absolutely look forward to what we are going to discuss, including some of the actual examples of African fashion. And then we're also going to discuss more of the intricacies of what African fashion actually entails with regards to the narrative around African fashion, the positionality of African fashion on the global stage, and how we actually maneuver around these narratives that are growing around us. So firstly, I'm actually going to read the bios of our speakers, but if I do read them completely, we'll be here for 1 hour on that alone, because they come with such an immense background and experience. I'm going to start with Anisa Mpungwe, who's the founder of Anisa Mpungwe Atelier, previously known as Loincloth and Ashes. Anisa was born in Tanzania. Her career started at the age of 19. She worked in various fashion houses, magazines, and apparel factories within Africa, America, and the United Kingdom. Her brand has been involved in fashion weeks in South Africa, Mozambique, Angola, Italy, Sweden, and New York. Her first flagship store opened in 2012. That same year, she got a nod from singer Solange Knowles when gracing her designs for the Elle magazine South Africa cover. She also works with stars like Anele Madoda, Bridget Masinga, Lyra, Simphiwe Dana, Amel Leroux, Sharon Smith, and Yukimi Nagano from Little Dragon, who has collaborated with Gorillaz. She's also won many accolades, such as the winning Emerging Designer of the Year, Africa in 2013, as well as collaborating with the Mr. Price Group across 3 ranges in countries such as Nigeria, Namibia, Botswana, and 40 stores in South Africa and online globally. Anissa was also chosen to gift the First Lady of the United States of America, Michelle Obama, during their first visit to Johannesburg. She was an MTV Awards Transform Today nominee in 2014, and she's also worked with brands such as LG, Samsung, Maserati, Converse, BET, and Bobby Brown. Anissa lives between Tanzania and South Africa, and she calls both of those countries a home. Anissa, I want to give you a warm greeting and welcome to our spring session.
Thank
Next
you,
up,
Shweshwe.
thank you so much for joining us. Next up, we have Siviwe James, who is a researcher, arts practitioner, and archivist whose works speak through visual and sonic archaeology as reconstructions of place and meaning. James' practice inserts fragments of time in the voids of history, creating new imaginaries as landscapes of knowledge of the lives and worlds of the Xhosa people, working with both personal and public audiovisual archival materials and everyday interviews. James has presented her work at the Historical Association of South Africa Conference, Stanford Humanities Center, which was called Sensing Between Histories and Archives Workshop, the State of Fashion Ways of Caring Biennale, Design Future Labs, and she has also published as part of the AFRI Collective for the Past Journal, with published writings with Fashion Studies California. She's also doing a podcast called The Fold, which is a creative and collaborative research project led by the African Fashion Research Institute. James has also recently been selected as a speaker at the Conjunctions of Archives and Public Spheres, Embodied Histories, Memory, and Multimedia Archives in Africa conference held in Basel, Switzerland, recently from the 18th to the 20th of October. Sibiwe, thank you so much for joining us, and we greatly look forward to hearing your insights into the rise of African fashion. Next up, we have Annette Pringle-Kolsch. Annette Pringle-Kolsch is the managing member of the fashion agent. She moved from Germany to South Africa in 2004, where she lives with her South African husband for 19 years. Pringle Kolsch is an ex-Hugo Boss global brand manager with more than 32 years of professional experience in the fashion industry. She is a fashion professional. She works globally and in South African context in the fields of collection planning and merchandising, brand management, product development, pricing strategies, brand collaborations, manufacturing, and distribution. She is a hands-on advisor. She implements practical solutions, working closely with African designer brands, bringing positive change to their businesses. And therefore, she's expertly placed to talk to us about rising African and South African brands. Her biggest success stories are she worked with Thebe Magugu, the winner of the LVMH Prize in 2019, and she worked on the Lagos Space Program, winner of the International WUMOC Prize in 2023. As stated earlier, Pringle Kolsch also co-founded The Fashion Agent in 2012. Thank you so much, Annette, for joining us, and we really look forward to your insights tonight.
Thank you, Stefan. Yeah, looking forward to the discussions.
Fantastic. Okay, then we have our moderators. Firstly, I would like to introduce to you Louise McWade. Louise holds the position of Research Manager at Stadio School of Fashion, where she also teaches the subject of fashion culture to students pursuing their diploma. Louise is committed to nurturing the critical thinking capabilities of her students and enhancing their proficiency in systematically analyzing and communicating the underlying social commentary within the realm of fashion. She specializes in exploring topics related to South African fashion with a particular emphasis on matters pertaining to identity, representation, post-colonialism, and gender. Thank you, Louise, for moderating for us. Finally, I'd like to welcome Melissa Fourie. Melissa Fourie is a dynamic and passionate fashion design lecturer, specializing in garment construction. She's on the cusp of completing her master's degree. Melissa earned her bachelor's and honors degree in fashion design from the Stadio School of Fashion. She is one of our homegrown talents. She also honed her skills and developed a keen eye for innovation. Determined to deepen her knowledge and contribute meaningfully to the world of fashion education, Melissa embarked on a journey to pursue a master's degree in consumer science. Her research focuses on the online shopping habits of the South African female consumer, with a specific focus on online shopping cart abandonment. As a lecturer, Melissa brings a fresh perspective to the classroom, infusing her teachings with a blend of academic rigor and real-world experience. Melissa looks forward to contributing to the discourse on fashion innovation, guiding her students towards a future where creativity and responsibility converge. Melissa, thank you for joining us this evening, and I welcome you as a moderator in this discussion. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to hand the floor to Louise, who will speak to us and set the scene of what this discussion is all about.
Hello, everybody. Those are the questions. Are we going to do the questions? Why am I seeing this, Stefan?
Louise, I'm just putting this on the shared screen for you to do an introduction to the topic.
Okay, all right. Those are the questions. So that's okay. So what I'm sort of tasked to do was to contextualize this session. I also am very aware that we have three amazing speakers, and I'd like to give you as much time as possible. So my contextualization will be very brief. I'm going to share with you an image that I think you will all know and recognize. And as we know, a picture paints 1,000 words. So that will take up many of the words that I was going to say. I'm trying very hard here to share my screen. Okay, there you go. Are you seeing what I'm sharing?
Yes, we are
No?
seeing what you are sharing. Thank you, Louise.
Oh. What you're seeing, the Yves Saint Laurent image? Thebe is shaking her head at me. Yeah. Okay. What I am sharing at this point is an Yves Saint Laurent image. Stefan, you've got a PowerPoint on which has my questions. Have you stopped sharing those?
Certainly. Which questions would you like to share, Louise?
I would like to share an image just briefly. That one. Are we getting that? Oh. Yeah. I don't know why am I struggling so. All right, I don't know why. The image that I'm trying to share is not coming up.
I think we can just move on to your question.
Okay. Okay, are we doing the questions first before the? No, not on the same page. They're fine. Okay. All right. I'll have to describe it to you. Basically, to contextualize this session, basically, I was going to show you the Yves Saint Laurent image. We all do know it. 1967. This was Yves Saint Laurent and the beaded dress on a white model posed between what looks like two sort of in his own imagination, sort of cave art structures. Okay, so from there, that image in your mind, in your imagination, that was the way African fashion was co-opted and presented to the world in terms of the Western sort of imagined African context. That was fashion. What Africa had was not fashion. Okay, so the sense of entitlement to take the African, or what they perceived as African or imagined as African icons and craft ideas, all that have spread across Africa, and combine them all into a sort of westernized fashion output. Basically, that was Paris fashion. That is how fashion was imagined. Okay, so to go, we would jump through the idea of the colonization amongst the things that were taken, which we all know, was this creativity from Africa, taken and appropriated into Western fashion, and that was the way it was seen as fashion. And I think Africa has fought their way through that suppression of the creativity that was actually there, and sort of it watered it down into their own representation of that. So looking at moving on into where we are now, we're looking at a whole new generation of African creators that have really come into their own. We're seeing a contemporary representation of Africa, of heritage, in an authentic and represented with integrity the way it should be. And I think that is where we come to the rise of African fashion truly having happened. And I think the groundwork has been laid by designers that have really fought their way through this perception. And we now have a whole new generation of designers that have brought us a much more conceptual, avant-garde type of fashion. And I think that's where I will leave you. Sorry you couldn't see Yves Saint Laurent, but I'm sure you all know it.
Mm.
Okay. Now I'll hand you over to Melissa. Melissa, will you take over with your presentation?
Good evening, everyone. I hope that you're all doing well. Welcome to our 5th spring session. From my side to our guest speakers, it is an honor and a privilege to have you all join us this evening. I know that we're all looking forward very much to hearing your perspectives on this topic. I, for one, am looking forward to it very much. Our higher certificate students are this year using wax prints and Shweshwe textiles. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion. I see we have a few students joining us on this meeting as well. So please, everyone, take notes. I am going to immediately hand over to Anissa so that you can get the time that you deserve to speak on this topic. And again, welcome everyone from my side as well. So Anissa, if you want to get your presentation ready, I will then stop my camera and a mic and I'll hand over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me go first. Whew. I haven't spoken to people in a very long time, so it's such a pleasure to be here. And also to be here as a participating designer, a working designer within the industry. Many of the things that we're going to talk about today, I myself and many designers like myself get impacted in the forefront of it all. So thank you for the introduction. I have a presentation that I'm gonna try and share.
I can see it.
Okay, can everybody else see my screen?
Yes, thank you, Anissa.
Okay, all right. So I'm also not good at the screen sharing. So if I mess up, my apologies. So as I mentioned, I've been in the fashion space for quite a while. It's been just a little over 17 years. I started just behind when fashion weeks started happening within the continent. So I'm just going to really talk about, have an introduction on myself, some historical perspective, contemporary fashion and cultural significance, global impact, challenges and opportunities, and a conclusion. So yes, my name is Anissa. As Stefan said, I recently changed my brand from Loincloth and Ashes to Anissa Mpungwe in 2021. But I ran Loincloth and Ashes for the past 15 years. And I've worked with many people within the industry to really have an understanding of how the industry works and all the challenges we really do go through within the fashion space. And it is so nice from this side of history to see how much we've come along. Even as now I look at all these images, there were so many different chapters within my fashion career that I fought through to get to where essentially I am today. I recently just got back from Portugal Fashion. It was my first time showcasing in Portugal, in Porto. It was such a great experience for me because they have such a hunger for specifically African fashion, excuse me, specifically African fashion. All the way down to I would get random emails. I think I got about 50 to 60 emails requesting to come to the show. And that gives such a boost to a designer that nobody knows in a country that is so foreign showing for the first time. And all the other all the other African designers shows were also jam-packed. With people who have a keen interest in what the Africans are bringing to the table. So that was really, really exciting for me. So introduction. The history of African fashion is about storytelling, is about resilience, is about creativity. It is also about cultural pride. It has evolved over time, reflecting the changing dynamics of the African societies and their interactions with the global markets. Today, African fashion continues to thrive and gain global recognition for its diversity and innovation. This is also a creative sector that represents an untapped market with a significant economic potential. Historical perspective. So for me, the fashion space really started from the vanguard, the ecosystem, the thing that makes this fashion machine move and work and function. I have 3 examples here, but there really should be 4. These 3 examples represent South, West, and East Africa. It's just that with North Africa, there aren't really, there isn't really a noted person that I could look at, see, or even within my time in fashion knew of that started, but I do know it started heavily in Egypt, Cairo. So we all know Lucilla Boyson. She was basically the mother of fashion for me. She opened my fashion career wide when I entered the All New Talent in 2008. She was incredibly giving in how she taught me how to present my work, how to think about my work, places where I could tweak. Herself and actually Chris Falloon that you've had before, they really played a big role in my fashion career in the beginning. Then we have Lexi Mojo Eyes from Nigeria. He started Fashion Week within West Africa, and he really started this wind of these fashion weeks that started emerging within the years, as well as Mustafa Hassanali, who works with Swahili Fashion Week in Tanzania. These people really were the seed of how most of us as fashion designers, this is how you know of us, this is how we have been appearing in the news. Is this from my... Sorry?
I believe it might have been a mic glitch on someone else's side, so feel free to continue, Anissa.
Okay. So I find that these individuals really opened, they were the seed of all of us working and starting our careers in the industry. So what did we bring to the table? I've written quite obvious things here: vibrant colors and prints, inclusivity and representation, cultural fusion, artisanal craftsmanship, never been seen before storytelling, and diverse textiles. But these were told by people who have never had a fashion history. Africa as a whole, as a continent, we didn't have a system that we could follow of our own. And that's why these represented themselves in such a unique way when we were doing the fashion, when we were doing Fashion Week, how we are doing Fashion Week now. We told it in such a unique space where it was organized and messy. It was colorful and inclusive. It was so many things in one that it became an interesting way of telling stories about Africa to the rest of the world. And I speak here of diverse textiles, and I have 2 slides here speaking of these textiles, because they're almost like nature calling for us. Someone from East Africa could recognize what a kente is and could say, oh, hang on a minute, that is from the West. It's something maybe I don't know what it's called necessarily, or maybe how it feels necessarily, but I can recognize that that is kente. And that same experience was happening across the globe for somebody maybe who's in Germany or some place far. And I put these here because these really were our first major tools within the fashion space to make noise. I know for myself, when I started, I had such a hunger to be just like Alexander McQueen, or to be just like, you know, an international big designer. I never really looked within because there was no standard at that time that I looked at and wanted to emulate or wanted to be like. And the standard was always like, oh, be like the West. However, I can tell you a small story. I had my mother went to India for a trip. She bought some fabric. The fabric had a bit of texture. It was a cotton and had a bit of texture. She came back. She bought quite a significant amount. She came back with it and she said, oh, you know, you can use this, try and see if you can, you know, do anything with it. And I remembered I made very simple full circle skirts. And I think I made about 20 of them, and I sold them at my parents' house. And at that time, we didn't have social media, so I don't even actually remember how I did it, but maybe through email. I can't seem to remember. Or I called friends and I said, oh, I'm doing a house, like I did a house shopping experience. And out of everything that I had in my parents' living room, those skirts went out first and went out very quickly. And I realized, okay, then there's something here about texture, there's something here about print that people like and are enjoying. So let me explore this this side of myself that I also was not trying to really try and discover, because I was busy trying to be like an Alexander McQueen, which when I think about it now is quite silly. But at the time, I think it was a necessary mindset to understand why I liked certain things and why I didn't. So speaking of contemporary fashion and cultural significance, for myself and many others, the platforms are the spaces where we get to tell our stories. At least that's how it started. Fashion weeks was something that for me was everything. You had to showcase at every fashion week as much as possible. I didn't even have a store. I didn't have a marketing plan. I didn't even have a business plan. But I was there and I was ready to perform. And very quickly you learn that this is the business of fashion. As much as you can make pretty things and things that are interesting and make sense, these platforms are really there to help you navigate your way through your business and making it a sustainable business. So because it started off with fashion weeks, it then, you know, we became more, I guess, successful in our storytelling. and the world was really interested. So much so that the V&A had an Africa fashion exhibition in London that happened last year. It had 45 designers from 20 countries with 25 objects, which is such a great testament to the designers who weren't even mentioned on in this exhibition, because this was a work of so many people that made noise about Africa and telling the African story. Other major platforms that I find that helped myself and others are the major houses, you know, New York, Paris, London, Portugal, and the African Fashion Week platforms as well, as I mentioned, in South Africa, Nigeria, and Tanzania. As for us, fashion became louder, other entities started helping out too. Industry Africa, led by Nisha Bakar, Nisha Kanabar. She comes from an e-commerce background, but she also comes from a knowledge sharing space. So not only does she have an e-commerce space that helps a designer like myself and others tell our story, but she also has the e-commerce entity to it. There's Folklore, Zalando, Moda Operandi, Onassis that really caters to the Middle East market, Fifth and Avenue, and Farfetch. Farfetch has a really interesting concept where they work with boutiques, and that's the only way you can get into the Farfetch space. That if you are in boutiques within particular spaces within Europe or the US, you then get, you can showcase, or you can be within Farfetch. And now when I went to Portugal Fashion Week, I had the opportunity, or the designers, as we had an opportunity to go to the Farfetch headquarters, and they, gosh, it feels like AI in an AI world in there. It's just, there's a system that works on, I can't even explain to you. There's the little studio pods that have models in, a stylist and a photographer. Everything is automated. Everything works click, click, click. The clothes are coming in, the accessories are going out, the shoes are coming in. It is really mind-blowing. I do have a video too on that. I could share maybe afterwards. It was really something for us kind of to see how far this fashion could go within the African space. Other spaces that also I find that really assist is spaces like Tanoi, Canex, Creative Fashion Africa Nexus that works with African Bank, is what we went under with Canex to Portugal. It's called Canex Africa. And how I didn't say this, how I actually got to showcase it in Portugal Fashion Week is I applied to Canex Africa. Out of 300 applicants, myself and Palesa from, oh gosh, she's going to kill me. Oh, it's left my head.
Palesa Moku Bang Bancho, yeah.
So yeah, there we go. Thank you. She represented South Africa, I represented Tanzania, and we were just there looking at each other thinking, wow, what an experience this is, that you could be in a space like this and really just tell the African story from two different languages. And obviously then entering competitions like the Africa Fashion Up or the LMVH, which we all know has made a success of designer Thebe Magugu. And Thebe is here on my next slide. I find that through the fashion weeks, through the trade shows, through all the things that we have been working on throughout the years, this is the result of it. Thebe is one. Andrea Iyama is another. Andrea is a force to be reckoned with. This girl is from Nigeria. She studied in Canada and is in between the US and Nigeria, has a show space in Nigeria, but also has a wish list of a stockist. If you go to her website, you just have a look. And she features in quite a few series and movies and things. Well, her clothes do. And she has a system that works, that engages with social media, that engages with YouTube, that engages with her own website. And this is somebody that I think many young designers, even myself as a designer who's been around for a long time, look at her strategy, and she's got it down pretty well, that she mixes commercial and is creative, and the balance is working really well with her. And the last one is Tokyo James. He is also from Nigeria, incredibly flamboyant, hardworking, but he is in every artist, his clothes are in every artist's music video. He's a great designer to look at. One of the things that Thebe has said that I think is so true is there are so many facets to where we have been through, what we have been through as a continent that people don't actually understand. So often that our story has been told by other people. And as a designer myself, I find that to be changing. And I say this as an early 80s baby who only had, for me, social media was really kind of on when the middle of the second year that I opened my store. So Instagram, I learned it along the way as I was busy trying to do my Excel spreadsheets to see if my UIFs have gone through. And because I could see my restrictions from before and what I can do now as a designer, these stories of ours were told by others, like Louise showed with the YSL image. Even though I still see there is a romanticized idea about Africa, I think us as a people are becoming a lot louder with what we want to say. Global impact. Just quickly here, I said, who is participating? I think the entire world is participating in telling the African story. Celebrities, change makers, literature, collaborations, lyrics in music, films, festivals, international influences, social media. And how about the longevity? Fortunately for us, Africa has the youngest population in the world, with 70% of its people being under 30. We are less conditioned by the past and more open to accelerating transformation. I think many of us are just tired, not just as fashion designers, as a people. I think many of us are just tired of having somebody else speak for us. And because it's a collective feel, you feel, as a designer, you see it in your everyday life. You see it when you go out to the store and buy fabric. You see it when you're negotiating prices for things. It's all there. And as long as I think that drive is there, the talkability is there, Africans, we are loud in any case. You can't shut us up. I think the transformation into a better system within the ecosystem, it will just get better. And the currency for us, apart from actual money, is tags on social media, mentions on social media and outside of with traditional media, features, And even just being a finalist for something and not necessarily winning something can get you to a space higher than you were before. Challenges and opportunities. Of course, we still face challenges, sustainability infrastructures, access to funding, mentorship, textiles, specialized machinery, education in our own markets, and legal acumen. The last three, I saw how important they were on this trip that I've just been on now. We went to a factory that I've heard of tech packs. We all know tech packs, but this particular tech pack was even looking at the tenacity of a fabric. So a company can come and say, Chanel can go and say, oh, we want this t-shirt, but the stretchability must be this percentage and this fiber must be that percentage. And I couldn't even understand the jargon. Mind you, I've been in the industry for a long time. And that was so mind-blowing for me that they can literally make exactly what you want and how you want it. And the challenge with education, with educating our markets, and I think this is where even myself, I sometimes find a challenge, is having the consumer really understand what you have to go through to have that item on the shelf, and the cost of it. And I think as designers, it is our responsibility to push and speak about it and say how it's done, so that there is a level of appreciation to why the price is the way it is. And also legal acumen. I think the legal acumen, sometimes you can be a designer who has the $200,000 deal from somebody in Italy, but you have no idea how to negotiate or how to sign that legal document. And I think that these challenges are strong, are very prominent within our space, that I think if we continue to work together, all of us will get it right. And solutions, we already have solutions on our hands. If you can't, online presence, have an e-commerce store, entering international competitions, doing B2B engagement, B2C engagement, and diversifying the value chain. I have moved my business. I've had to divide my business into working in South Africa and working in Tanzania. I'm currently speaking to you from Tanzania because I've seen that if I want certain things to be done, and maybe that can't be done from one country and they have to be done in another, that's what needs to happen. And obviously a lot of social media presence. The conclusion, I'm quoting myself. We are really revolutionizing the world's perception of Africa through the fashion lens. It will be slow, there'll be a lot of pepe, meaning it'll be stressful, but it will be done. Yeah, that's the end of my presentation. I tried to be as quick as possible to give everybody else a chance. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Anissa. I think we can all agree that that was a very insightful conversation. And what you said in the beginning of not, being that comfortable speaking, you did a great job. Thank you so much. I really did appreciate, it really resonated with me when you spoke about looking within, and how a lot of young students we see quite often come into their studies wanting to emulate Western designers. And even though it is starting to change, we still see it quite a bit. And I think that's why it's so important to have this conversation in the academic sphere when it comes to fashion, because we have the privilege and the honor of helping these young South Africans, even from other countries coming to study with us. We have the opportunity to help shape their minds and to give them that platform to be able to explore the story that they want to tell eventually and which type of designer they want to become. So I think that was very insightful Thank you so, so much. I know I really did appreciate it quite a bit, and I made so many notes, and I can't wait to share it with my students who couldn't be here this evening. So again, thank you so much. Louise, I'm going to hand over to you, and yes, that's it from my side for now.
Thank you, Melissa. Now moving on to Thebe. I am so glad to see you after such a long time. It's really, really lovely. Thebe, I'm not going to spend too much time. I'm just aware of the timing, and I know that you have a lot to tell us. I anticipated that you will fill us in terms of the neocolonialism and the path and the route that we have taken as also as part of Africa. Perhaps we maybe entered a little later than the rest of Africa into this arena, being sort of more 94-ish. And so I'll let you carry on and give us your insights.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you to my hosts, and thank you, Anissa, for opening us up this evening. So yeah, it's lovely to be chatting with Stadio, my old alumni. And it's nice to actually have you in the room, Louise. So so this topic this evening, unfortunately, I don't know if I'm necessarily going to be a ball of joy when it comes to this topic, because I do find myself in a bit of tension with it. As I was speaking earlier with Stefan about what it means for us to speak of Africa as being on the rise. So for me, as a practitioner and researcher, my work is influenced by my ideas of home and the many histories that I've got that tether me to the Eastern Cape and Africa. So I find it quite difficult to be discussing the continent, our fashions as being on the rise. I think we have always adorned ourselves and expressed ourselves through our own fashion systems in ways that might have been outside of a Western framework of what it means to be in a fashion system, but we have had systems. So again, I find myself quite complexed when it comes to this topic. And I wonder, is there another way to ask the question, what is African fashion to begin with? We tend to speak of African fashion as prints, as resilience, and then culture tethers it all there. But I think sometimes we overlook that even though we haven't had a set system that maybe matches what was already there, we have had a fashion system. If you look at any tribes, and as Anissa mentioned, Kente cloth, for example, that is a form of fashioning ourselves. It is a part of a fashion history, and it does speak to fashions of sorts. So again, for us to speak of Africa as being on the rise, I think there's something that we need to complicate for a second there. Things that stood out for me that, again, troubled my idea around the topic that was brought up in the abstract that I was emailed. The writing was the turning point in African fashion's rise came with a reimagining of traditional elements, being print, vibrant colors in a contemporary context. But the revisioning and visibilizing of other design systems and design languages to a global commercial audience should never equate to a rise or emergence of a particular people, place, and culture. The African fashion landscape has always and continues to offer up a vastness in creative contributors and contributions. As Anissa points out, she's mentioned 3 stalwarts who have started fashion platforms and anchored fashion platforms on the continent, but we've also got designers. Duro Olowu, Kofi Ansah, Upalisa that's been mentioned, Nkensani, who was part of the first fashion weeks in South Africa, Craig Native as well. These are pioneers of the industry. And so again, I trouble this idea of us being on a rise. I can understand where we place the concept of it being a rise, potentially being the visibility or the extended visibility of our younger creatives now. Creatives that have managed to penetrate certain platforms, international platforms that might have seemed a little harder to reach. But again, should that equate to a rise? Or should that equate potentially to international systems of fashion looking for more because they no longer have enough of themselves to look at? As a continent, we boast a rich textile history, and I think that really anchors the beginnings of our fashions. Our textile practices that are preserved to this day continue to tether us to our long past and our spiritual and cultural modalities as a people on this continent. Kente, as we've mentioned before, it's used as a way of embodying knowledge and history onto people. It might not fit into a Western framework of what it means to fashion oneself, but that form of material culture allows for people to remember themselves to who they are, to the many histories that they have. And so what has always been visible and sacred to us continues to offer so many a form of holding on to the past while we negotiate our contemporary identities. Kente's popularity, Virgil Abloh did a beautiful way of revisioning it, and again, maybe bringing it to a more contemporary prominence. But for the people who are of its origins, Kente is an everyday fashioning system. So I keep coming back to the question of what do we mean when we say that Africa is on the rise? And so what do we suggest of emerging designers and their efforts when we keep clustering them and their works as a part of this rise? What are we suggesting of our stalwarts who have planted firm foundations for contemporary makers when we consciously write over their markers in favor of younger names that come to inherit their efforts? The suggested rise should be rewritten to speak more to an ease in trade. Anissa brought this up. She speaks about how before you didn't have social media, she would have had to email people. The ease in trade should be rewritten as opposed to us speaking of it as a rise. Our increased visibility and agency as creators from this continent should be rewritten as opposed to being spoken as a rise. It should speak of technology's role in offering contemporary makers more freedom to promote and propel their efforts to a global audience without requiring visibility through traditional gatekeepers. But this should not exclude what was already here. This rise, when spoken of by us Africans, should maybe highlight spaces for future industry collaboration and development that will and should assist designers, makers who continue to enter this industry searching for support, that will offer them the sort of market readiness that is needed for them to sustain themselves. We must remember that not all designers or makers who enter the fashion industry will enter international platforms like the LVMH or even SA Fashion Week. And so what else are we providing our growing designers to nurture them into understanding and honing a strong business acumen to propel their skills and the textile industry into the next age? Year in and year out, we see many talent searchers that have very eager minds. I have taught a few as well who go in looking to be the next designer, but they end up lost in the cracks of this industry and potentially feeling isolated or exploited by the fashion industry. So what does this rise bring our continent? Before we continue to regurgitate the Vogue articles that hype us up into offering international markets new taste makers, what are we doing to enhance our lives for our creative practitioners? We've mentioned fashion weeks, but as a former designer myself, I'll tell you that fashion weeks, when you're coming straight out of a studio, aren't sustainable. You spend a lot more money producing samples than you do get the opportunity to actually make clothing and sell clothing. So what are we giving our young designers? Not everyone has to be a designer. We need shoemakers, we need bag makers. We need to begin to extend our industry to incorporate a wider range of apparels and items that are involved with the fashion industry. Where is our counter-reflective stance to the international hype of our talents and systems? I'm reminded of dialogues that I've had with friends who have remained fashion designers in the local scene. Their disenchantment with the chosen profession should make us wary of merely jumping onto the bandwagon of newness, when the industry is still a nail-biting journey of survival of the fittest for so many young minds who continue to enter it. My appeal is to reconsider how we frame ourselves. My appeal to reconsider how we frame ourselves does not wish to dismiss the efforts of the platforms that exist that support our pool of practitioners over the years. Platforms like Twig, AFI, Lagos Fashion Week, even Ethical Fashion Initiative continue to play a crucial role in extending resources to the continent's makers. But I do wish to ask us, as the industry at large, to look at what lies on a micro level as well. And so I'd like to position this evening's discussion with a broader framework, as I feel we might be drawing from the shortened end that tends to be filled with a kind of trend speak that still positions from the global north. My words are less of a critique on our panel, but a critique on the global window dressing of giving African fashion space at the table, where the global north still sets the dinner table rules and language. The choice of words for today's panel continue to frame us as a gazed upon Africa, as a mere reference to the new trend taste, where I wish we could and we should instead be nourishing the past in the present as a way of expanding on a historical dialogue of systems that have long been treated as exotic tropes to the West. I wish to ask us all to maybe linger a little longer on the sustainability of our fashion schools and how we teach the business of our local fashion systems, as opposed to praising esteemed prize platforms that always select a singular name and face to represent the whole. The unfortunate part of this evening's discussion is that due to the global north having been the hegemonic dictator of taste, the global south has always had to succumb to this idea of first being seen in the north in order to finally be recognized by its own patrons in the south. And I think that's potentially what some of our older or more veteran designers have had to experience. A very unfortunate, if not disheartening, mode of arrival and growth for any maker. As I've mentioned, I've been a practitioner before, and my opinions and my positioning comes from firsthand experience, but also the dialogue I've had with friends, where the industry, where our disappointments in the industry were in it never challenging local audiences and patrons to think of local as being in the leagues of global aesthetics and tastes. Even now, as much as our audiences get excited about local clothing or local designers, there's always still competitive talk about our pricing. There's competitive talk about who was seen wearing that designer in order for that designer to receive the recognition they deserve. And so in order for creators from the continent to feel as though the work has reached a benchmark of visibility, acclaim or worth, they are pushed to aspire to the North's recognition in order for home to then offer it the sort of valuing it so long deserved. If I follow with the suggestions that have been offered today, I foresee us makers and thinkers of the continent burning ourselves out in the same way as the North. By the term burning out, I speak of local creatives burning themselves by compromising to fit into a global North model, and then having to, in addition, keep up with a highly problematic and violent system that will burn them out in their design methods, just like the designers of the North. So it's a double-edged challenge. We might end up repeating what has been the stencil of an industry standard set by the North, only to end up with Africanized renditions of Western designs, knowledges, and tastes. What will that offer our own design matrix, and who will it continue to exclude? Whose cultures, aesthetics, and sensibilities will it continue to erode and erase? What else will we do in the name of growth when we keep being made aware that our works need to cater to a global audience, as opposed to us catering to ourselves and letting the rest find their place where they wish to? We should not be written about as influencing global fashion trends. Instead, we should be seen as offering complex, as Afrocentric, highly skilled design sensibilities. I think of umbhaco in the Xhosa culture. I've seen local makers take the simple design of umbhaco and rethink it while still honoring Xhosa cultures and aesthetics. And so there's a way for us to continue to challenge the North without us always trying to attain Western silhouettes as a means of reaching the heights. I'm reminded of Frantz Fanon's quote in Akile Mbembe's talk on decolonizing knowledge and the question of the archive. Self-ownership, writes Fanon, is a precondition, a necessary step towards the creation of new forms of life. I would like to believe that it is in favor of Africa realizing itself first before it waits to be noticed by the West or the global North. Without being trapped in a tit-for-tat rhetoric with old systems, pioneers like Omoyemi Akerele, founder of Lagos Fashion Week, has set herself an enormous task of facilitating time and energy in order to offer local makers a platform that will allow them to freely express their identities to local audiences while setting a bar of excellence for Africa. Alternative platforms like that of Lagos Fashion Week are environments that have responded to the current platforms that don't nurture, support, endorse, celebrate African aesthetics, their makers, and their audiences in ways that reflect the liveliness of the continent. When we make and think or write for ourselves, we instinctively create room for all those around us to find their place and feel less fringe or outside in themselves and with their communities by creating this alternative space. My reflections for this talk direct us in the manner of self-ownership. Let us as Africans become more conscious about what our words can do to fashion a sense of self-ownership. If we have leaders, makers, and thinkers who are already aiding this desire to realize from within the continent, then should we as writers and thinkers not be aware of how we assign words to what is being wielded in the public domain? Let's challenge these notions of Africa still rising with the potential of a continent being soon forgotten, should it not meet the status set by the North. Let us remember so that we take ownership by our own terms and standards with our own histories and complexities. Let's follow in the thoughts of Nguni wa Thiongo, where we liberate our perspective from that of the North. So with those words, I'd like for us to rethink what it means to be on a rise. Designers like Thebe, and I know him very well, he's doing a practice that has long been here in our cultures as Africans, to write on cloth, to tell a history on cloth. It's nothing new. But when we keep making him sound new, we disregard the history that he's attached to as well. Thank you.
Sibiwe, thank you very much. That was a very, very sober assessment of the ecosystem and of the sort of trope, I think the trope. And when we say the rise of African fashion, you've perfectly encapsulated the sort of dichotomy of that phrase and the richness of your language and how you've actually painted the narrative and actually opened my eyes personally to what the dangers and threats and opportunities are for us, even just the way we think about fashion and performativity in our context and how we communicate and also what we communicate globally. And maybe it's more important to, like you said, establish those systems of support for our designers and our makers and even our thought leaders on the ground here. I think was impeccable, and I really thank you for your insights. Louise, do you want to take over from here?
Yes, please. Good. I'm sorry. I just had to put a light on. Siwe, sorry. I totally agree with you. I agree with the perception and the imagination of the North, basically, in terms of what fashion should be and setting those standards when we are looking at, African cloth, Adira and the mud cloth from Malawi and all of those amazing cloths that were fashion and were rendered not fashion because they didn't fit into the boundaries of what the North and the West considered fashion to be. So yes, I totally agree with that question. What does it mean, when we say rise of African fashion? African fashion has always been there. And I think to say the rise of African fashion, for me, the rise is to be able to break through that perception and to put down that perception. From the, as you say, from the hegemony of the women's house in terms of, if you didn't come from Paris, you not be a couturier, and it had to have a certain shape and style. And I think what we are seeing, and I think what the populace basically are seeing in terms of rise is the breaking down of those perceptions. So I think maybe that comes closer to the definition of what is African fashion. It is not what it has been presented as by the West. So the visibility also that you spoke about, that is also a very important sort of factor. And the telling of Africa's own stories, telling your own story. What our designers currently, the ones that I'm following, are following their own style, basically, but incorporating their own heritage within that, particularly not as an African curiosity, but as a sort of authentic integrity within their own work. I see that as a rise, but it is more personal in terms of the designers, and perhaps those of us who are following the designers to enjoy seeing that ownership for themselves. I think even Thebe, as we have spoken about him, I think he follows his own rules. And the fact that is being recognized, I think is a rise, but not as we are looking at it in terms of African fashion is now on the rise. It's always been there. So those are my sort of questions as in terms of what you've said and what I'm sort of combining with what you have said. So the question is really, do you not see, although the wording, I know the wording, fashion on the rise, African fashion on the rise, you are saying we need to rephrase those and perhaps present a different kind of language, use our words differently. But if we talk about the rise of African fashion, can we not just see it as the rise within each of our designers in terms of taking ownership and and being in control, not bowing to what has been set as a standard of fashion. And for me, that's coming into our own is for me a very exciting part of that process. Not in the system, making up your own mind about who you want to be and what you want to say. That's my comment on what you said, and I thank you really because you've given us so much more insight, and also challenged the way we present it and the way we speak. I can certainly challenge myself on that score as well. So thank you for giving us this, as you said, maybe awkward, but really, really fabulous. Thank you. Given us such a lot to think about. Okay, Melissa, would you like to take over?
Yes, thank you so much, Louise, and Severe, thank you to you so much. It also gave me a lot to think about, and I think if I could summarize my thoughts in one sentence, is truly you making me realize as well that a lot of African designers have been fighting for a seat at the global table, not realizing that we have our own table to sit at. We don't need to fight for a seat at the table as well. So thank you so much for the insight. It was incredible. I do see we have a question from Alexander. If you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to just keep all your questions towards the end. So please jot down all those questions. We do have a Q&A towards the end where we can ask our panelists to answer for us. And hi, Eugenie, it's lovely to see your face again as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the lovely Annette, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say on the topic.
Let me just find a PDF, otherwise I'm going from my Google Drive.
No worries, Annette, you can take your time.
Hold on, because let me just do this. And then I can find, I'm a Zoom fan, but this Google here. Let me just do that. Okay. Can you see all the Africa fashion slide?
At this point, we're still only seeing your team's screen, unfortunately.
Okay. Because it says here I'm on. I'm just saying stop sharing again.
I think something's happening.
Let me just go share again. I need to. Okay.
So Annette, I think while we give you some time to sort out the technical difficulties, not a problem.
Can you see it now?
No, unfortunately.
Okay, hold on, then I go on Google.
No worries. Alexander, if you have that question still for Saviwe, while we give Annette some time to sort out her presentation, would you mind sharing your question or your thoughts with us?
Yes, can you?
Yes, we can hear you.
Brilliant. I was very furiously typing. I'm going to miss the Q&A because I'm about to board my flight. But it's been an absolute wealth of knowledge. I think coming from the tech industry, having access to these kinds of insights and sitting in a room, hearing people with this kind of knowledge I'm very, very thankful, and it's very, very helpful for me as well. Coming from the tech industry, Stefan will know, Amnova, we've been working with Stadio and in doing market research, identifying this gap in the digital skills gap for the fashion industry and trying to accommodate for that gap and also trying to accommodate for alternative forms of manufacturing via 3D printing or, trying to lower the barriers of entry into the manufacturing market for fashion designers. Mainly students right now because it is developing tech. I wanted to know for Anissa specifically, since she has both the global and local perspective, what is the appetite for digital upskilling for students or fashion designers using softwares like Clo 3D or the other 3D modeling softwares? And if there is a difference in appetite between the global market versus the local, that being the African and South African market, why are the appetites different? And basically, is the romanticism of the traditional way of designing, with pen and paper, is that romanticism something that is a barrier of entry for, not a barrier, but rather something that would prevent people from going into alternative ways of designing, like, for example, using digital platforms? I think I'm out of time, but with that context of the question, I think I'll reach out on LinkedIn and maybe pick up the conversation there. I'm just being conscious of time for the rest of the session.
Do you want me to respond or should we wait till the end?
Yes, please, if the chair allows.
I think we can take it just briefly.
Okay, I think I can tell you from my perspective. I actually paused on the fashion industry from 2021 until now 2023, and it's because of the fact that I needed to upgrade my skill set, especially in the digital space. And I did go into Clo. Clo does make life easier, does make it is a lot better, it's more efficient, and you can do a lot more than just pattern cutting. You can communicate with your consumer in an AI scale. However, Clo is not for everyone. It is very expensive. And I don't think you can get anything cheaper than that. So I think that's one of the problems. Another problem is time. I knew when I was active in the industry, I didn't have time to do things like Clo. It's only because I consciously said that I'm taking a break from fashion that I could actually do Clo. I could actually code my own website and understand internet language. So the space for learning is there, the information is there, but I think access to it is the space where it's still a little bit tricky because of time and cost. But it does make, I've seen now that I'm back in the space, it makes things a lot easier for me to navigate with the new tools that I've put in place, but only because I gave myself time to learn it and update myself.
Thank you so much, Anissa, for sharing your thoughts on that question. Alexander, thank you so much for asking. We do wish you all the best for your travels. With that being said, I'm going to hand back to Annette. We look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this session tonight. I'm going to keep it very practical and hands-on and also play in the role of like the business. So I'm going to jump over that. Thank you, Stefan did the introduction. So I'm going to touch on brands I'm working with and on showroom setup and how it works. and then like intra-African trade. And then I'm also touching on manufacturing on the African continent and collaborations done on the African continent in terms of manufacturing. So it's more like a checklist. I have lots of slides, very visual. So I'm working with Thebe Magugu since 2016. And I think what's really important, whatever you do, is to keep archive of your work, you know, like to have a good profile, you know, like the about page, that when people ask you to send something, who are you, that you're not starting like giving them a 30-minute talk, but you have like your words, what is it about, who are you representing, why are you doing what you're doing, that you have that ready. And then also like, you know, things you've achieved already. It can be prizes and awards. You know, Thebe is now in the class of 500 Business of Fashion this year. You know that he has won the LVMH prize, and just before that, the IFS prize in London. That was 2019. And just some visuals from the moment right there, overwhelming. And he got the prize. And then he was also awarded the Franca Sosani Award in 2023 from Sarah Miner. That presentation took place in New York recently. So whatever your achievements are, you know, like keep footage of it, and also like from your collection. So when you work with buyers, you know, and as you might know that I'm working a lot on the wholesale side, which is B2B. It's important to keep like your hero pieces. So that's the actual collection we've just sold on pre-order. That's like another thing I'm wanting to highlight, you know, that what I encourage designers to do, I work with, is to literally make clothes where they have orders for. So not to produce garments and pieces, accessories, hoping it will sell, but the other way around, to get the orders first. So of course, Thebe needs to do, in this case, one sample collection. You know, each piece is made once, and then we're collecting orders, and that can be from like stores, which is B2B. It can also be B2C, and then it goes into production. And I think I'm just gonna like go through. So what's also good, you know, if you can do like a little fashion film on the project you're doing, it doesn't have to be like a big studio setup, you know, like use your peers, do something exciting, what speaks to you and what you can show. And that like, you know, like, yeah, because, you know, it's not about being on a runway necessarily, you know, so, but to show in visuals, like your story in a fashion film is always like very, very personal. So yeah, I'm not gonna watch it now. Is see how I get out of this. Yeah, so when I engage on his behalf with buyers, you know, it's important to show them the hero pieces from the collection. It's also like some sort of archiving for him. That spring summer 23, and you see like the handwriting, the styling is like falling through. That's SS22 he posed for the autumn winter season. So, and that's like the other thing, you know, like I find young designers, and that's across the globe, it's not specific to the continent, often reinvent the wheel for each collection. And that's then like a dangerous point to keep your clientele, your followers, because they buy into your story, they buy into your style. And if you would change every season, you know, it's difficult to build up a following. So that's autumn winter 21, 22. And it's just very simple, you know, everybody can do that, just putting pictures together in a presentation. So I'm talking now about like collaborations, the global ones. So he did collaboration with Spotify, and then obviously like the Thebe Magugu Dior collaboration, which had big waves. And then the Thebe Magugu Vogue and Snapchat collaboration, where like you could try on his heritage dresses. Collaboration with Adidas, and that manufacturing is then not in South Africa, that's abroad. And same with Adidas for Orlando Pirates, which launched now in July. An exciting Thebe Magugu and Maison Valentino. So that was a designer exchange, and that can also like be done on different platforms, you know, and it's maybe something schools could pick up in education just to build like the network bigger. I find, you know, schools tend to be like in the bubble, and I don't know much about Stadio, so that's my first encounter. So you guys might be different. I find it's quite good to have exchanges, and you know, with all the technology available now. I mean, Thebe and Pier Paolo didn't meet, so they saw virtually each other. So I think things like that can be done quite easily on different levels. So that was a Z Factory. And then with ID Magazine, he does community work. So I'd like to encourage you, you know, to take notes of this. And I mean, Stefan has a presentation. So when you go through in school as well, just to take it as sort of a checklist, you know, on how to archive the work you are doing and you're going to be doing. That's like his recent project, which is still running the customization on his own online store. Then his social media. And then like just key examples, you know, also again, what you achieved, with whom is your brand related. And it's good to say it in words, you know, but for people to see, the visuals speak more. And I think also for me, because I'm a foreigner, you know, English is not my first language, so I like showing images first. And then, of course, press articles, print or online. That was the recent collection. Yeah, the exhibition Anisa did talk about, so Thebe was part of it. And then, like, you know, we also list the stores. So in his case, 31 stockists across 4 regions. And then that's the next brand I want to show you I'm working with. So that's Lagos Space Program. So I met Adiju in 2020 in Lagos. And I was very fortunate. I got introduced to him by a dear friend of mine, an artist, Kadara Enyasi. I met in 2019, and he was wearing Adeju's clothes. So I'm asking him, what are you wearing? He's like, Lagos Space Program, as if everybody knows, and that's exactly how it should be. And I said, well, can you put me in contact with him? Because I think that's really very like conceptual, you know. And I'd like to make contact with him to see if he would be interested in working with me. And that worked out, yeah. And I mean, this year he won the International Woolmark Prize, and that's like the oldest fashion prize. So that's just imagery from their campaign. Yeah, it was incredible. And here, what you see here, Adeju is also working with artists in Benin. So he uses old bronze casting techniques for objects. He also entered the LVMH Prize in 2021. And yeah, that's just some images about research of his work. So the lady here, she's over 90 years old, and she is, yeah, the Adire artist in Nigeria. And it's really difficult to get, you know, like the younger generation. I mean, she taught her son to do it, and you see another person doing it on the top right. But it's very difficult to get like the younger generation interested in learning those techniques and telling those stories. And I mean, Sibylle like spoke a lot about it, and it's you know, like, and I read a quote in the African fashion book from the V&A that like what cloth is to, or what monuments are to the Western world, is cloth to the African continent, you know, and to make sure that that knowledge, you know, that storytelling through those craft techniques are not getting lost. That's sort of like his big mission, like very different, you know, like from Thebe Magugu, who lets people enter his African life, like his contemporary life, you know, like he's 30 years old, Adeju is 31 years old, so has a different view and lives a different life. So I think that's quite important to let people emerge in what you do, and let them be part of a world which is yours, and you own it. So, and at the bottom you see like bronze elements from those casters. So also he does like beautiful fashion films with his mates and peers in and music, everything with it. So that's the latest collection. We had pre-order wholesale in June. That's his spring summer 24. And it's like unisex. So that was the previous one. So he doesn't work in seasons, you know, so he works in projects. He does also home and jewelry. He showcased at Arise Fashion Week. Yeah, and he has like very little, you know, 9.8K followers across all channels, because that's like not his main drive, you know. So he was also part of the exhibition, the V&A. And then he does like pop-up events in Nigeria. It's Alara Concept Store. So they do then deals that he can use the space. They invite their clients, and it's really like a nice collaboration. And it's also like an interesting part. So the Humboldt Forum based in Berlin, Germany has contacted him. And he had like an exhibition last year at the Humboldt Forum, like showing his modern objects, like creating those objects with like Asian techniques, you know, and put it in a context of everyday life we know it now. And that's exhibition in the Wrist Museum. So like, you know, museums would just make contact and say, well, can we buy this for our archives? Because it's important for them to preserve what, you know, what designers are putting out in terms of like craft, storytelling, and also the press and articles. Then like celebrities, customers he's working with. And he has just 5 stockists, you know, so his main market is B2C. So he has as clients like architects, you know, like intellectuals, and we work with those 5 stores, which is good enough. So I just want to show you a bit of behind the scenes, like showroom images, like that's at Paris Fashion Week in the showroom. And then like you have your setup, your rails of the sample collection. Yeah, you have your electronic line sheets, you know, and in the middle, what you see there, it's a meeting with Bergdorf Goodman with the whole team and Thebe Magugu. So that was in March. On the top, you see Matches Fashion. That was in September last year. Here we have Dover Street Market stores. So it's, you know, and it's like they need those, they need a Thebe Magugu in their mix to have that storytelling. So it's exactly that what like CB referred to. CB, I'm not like getting the right words, but you said something like they're running out of ideas or like storytelling themselves, and, you know, and are hungry, and it's exactly that. So then we do online meetings. so for this season, we had mainly online meetings. So that's on the left, and then also on the right. And then you have like a whole buying team. You talk them through the looks, through the prices. We have little videos of each look that they can see how it looks on a body if we can't meet in a showroom. And similar for Lego Space Program. So that was in June, with buyers looking at the collections, similar setup. Yeah, so it's like United Airs, Mr. Corino's son at the left, and then Galerie Lafayette in the middle. And then you might know him, it's like influencer on the top right. And yeah, Sivu spoke about Omoyemi, and I highly regard her. So, and she has a quote in the book Africa Fashion, which has been published by the V&A. And she says, yeah, Africa's population is estimated to be approximately 1.2 billion, spread across 54 countries. So our designers are currently being encouraged to explore intra-African trade with a mission to target and access a micro fraction of the population. And I think one mustn't forget that, you know, and I've just put like 3 platforms, not knowing how good they are. So I haven't done it with the brands. They would do that, but like very easy to access, possibly not as curated as Africrea. So for, you know, like a startup designer, might be a good thing just to create an account and see what's happening and to get familiar with the whole distribution channel. Then the owner of Kisua, he started Ananse Africa, which is, I guess, a similar concept. And then locally here we have Zando. To access, they have also like marketplace models. So and yeah, it's fairly easy to get those presentations and to start then the accounts. And with Africrea, it's certainly the case that they have the best shipping rates with DHL on the continent. So they get the best rates. That's why it's interesting to look into their platform as well. Then I'm going to touch on manufacturing on the African continent. So with costs rising in Asia, you know, like some companies do like blueprint setups here on the continent and then employ people from the continent, bring the knowledge from overseas. And the missing link is now to also generate textiles on the continent. So there will be like a setup happening in Senegal to do fabric production on a larger scale. But I mean, that will take a while. And yeah, Sivi also mentioned EFI, so the Ethical Fashion Initiative. So they have like really amazing weaving facilities in Burkina Faso and lots of other different projects, but that's like a really established, or Lucanio Dingi uses them, for example. So there is a lot of interest in manufacturing on the continent. That's just 2 screenshots of us talking on the left to a large retailer and on the right to like a brand in Lagos looking for additional production capacities. And yeah, also just sharing, you know, like manufacturing on the continent, when, you know, like when I'm getting pulled into collaborations, I really push for manufacturing in the country. So these are images from Kenya and Zambia, and that was a collaboration for Shivas, for a whiskey, and with a Kenyan designer in Zambia, it was Isnoko. Some of you might know him because he has been showing at SA Fashion Week a few times. And I'm just showing those images because it's a lot about like knowledge transfer, you know, and to make it work, whatever locations you have available to do the job. So, and that is a very important part what I do. And then, you know, when you have the chance to travel, like Anisa touched on it, that she was in Portugal now, and Also, when you have the chance to travel in Africa, you know, some of you might have been invited to other fashion weeks. I think it's important to get out of the hotel or wherever it's showcased, you know, and to experience and mingle with the city there, and to create connections, you know, and to find people who do manufacture, to go to the markets, like build your network. I you know, like sometimes I speak to designers and they come back from a showcase and yeah, they didn't go out because it was difficult, or they were scared, or it was too expensive. And you know, like then I just like, then take packet soup, you know, don't eat in the hotel, but take packet soup, and so that you can like jump in a bus, taxi or Uber, and go somewhere to see other stuff. So I think that's really important to build up the network. Here I'm just showing like the detail work then of collaborations. You know, it sounds always so glamorous, and but there is Pantone colors involved, so you have to create like a specific label. So this was a collaboration, Imana Isi and Shivas. So Imana Isi is a haute couture designer based in Paris, and he comes from Cameroon, from Yaoundé. And Shivas wanted to do like a project for Yaoundé. So they managed then to partner with like a education training center there, and it was impossible to get the production done there of the goods. So they decided to do it in South Africa, and that's where I came into the picture. And yeah, we then did that collaboration. And I'm just showing like, you know, a few images, like dye sample process. So we had to get the right colors, the right Pantone. And obviously it reacts on each material different than again. And then they wanted beadwork, and some of you might recognize Carlo. So like he was then like managing production for that project. And on the bottom right, you see like the sketch we got from Imana Isi, you know, and then you create like a sample. So we looked first at the shape and how we can create those little heads he wanted in the beading. And you know, so it's very much detail, but it's just like to show you this is then what makes a difference, to incorporate like local companies on the continent, manufacturers, crafters, like tailors, and really bring it then all together in the product which needs to get out there. And that's also the fun part, at the same time the part which gives you gray hairs. And that was then like just behind the scenes in Cameroon, Yaoundé, when they shot then the styles. And that one you might have seen, it was Thebe Magugu Castle Lights. So everything was done here in South Africa. And that is the Coca-Cola collaboration, Rich Nisi, Escort, Solson, Meili. And it was very important when the agency of Coca-Cola pulled us in. We managed to get the head designer from Coca-Cola Atlanta back then out to South Africa to speak to those 4 designer brands and to really brief them on design identity, what Coca-Cola expected. And we got to the point, you might see like Rich Nisi was able, they agreed that we can like have our own Coca-Cola writing, which was huge to get it approved through their design channels. Yeah, and that's just the contact details. So thanks very much.
Annette, thank you so much for sharing your insights. I think this was, I know that it was very informative in terms of a look behind the curtain to really see what goes into everything. I think as we see with a lot of our students, or at least from my perspective, because I'm with the first years and the higher certificates, we see the students come in and have this perception about the fashion industry. And I think this will be so incredibly valuable for them to see the practical side of things and not just the dream side, which I absolutely love. So thank you so much. Something that really stood out to me is when you were speaking about the archiving, videographic and photographic evidence. So even though they are still studying photographing and videoing the current projects that they're busy with, as a way to look back and archiving as well. So thank you so much for the practical look at the rise of African fashion, even though we're trying to avoid saying rise after we heard Shweshwe speak. I think that was very, very insightful. So thank you so much. Louise, I know that we have some questions prepared, but I think for timing, I am going to hand over to Stefan directly
Yes.
to get some questions from the audience.
Yes, thank you. So we have run over time, so I am going to open the floor to the audience for any questions, and then I'm gonna, just for us to maybe conclude the session, just maybe throw out one question to the three of you, and which we can engage in. And then I also want to thank you again. We didn't manage your time because we were so eager to hear from you. So we didn't interrupt you because we really wanted to draw knowledge from you, each of you. So I'm just going to throw this one question onto the screen. If you could just bear with us for 1 second. And the question is as follows. So trend analyst Lee Edelkoort, the famous Lee Edelkoort, has noted a significant shift in global creativity, where a new generation of creatives in the southern regions is emerging. This generation is actively promoting local craftsmanship, as Annette has showed us, utilizing regional materials, respecting ancestral traditions, and indigenous cultural values. The axis of global creativity has indeed dramatically shifted, says Edelkoort. And maybe she is being slightly dramatic, but that's what we'd like to hear from our panel. What is your perspective on the global appetite for the African aesthetic? And can I please open up this question to the panel? Yeah, so Siviwe, can we start with you, because you were very vocal in your critique of the appetite as being a voracious appetite that feeds into a system of consumption. So if I can open the floor to you to maybe address what this statement is perhaps indicating.
Thank you. So, I mean, I feel like I'm the doom and gloom person in the room. So horrible. Look, it's great for what we've always done to be celebrated in this way. It's great for us youngsters, a new generation of creatives, to be able to go home and to actually sit with our elders and pay more attention to the things that seemed a little bit, I don't know, a little bit outdated during their time of relevance. This appetite for African aesthetic, like I said, it is a lack in the North having anything interesting to offer us anymore. About 3 years back, if not 4 years back, just before COVID hit, Lee Edelkoort was already speaking about how she was predicting a need for the fashion industry to move towards a stronger teaching base in artisanal trades. So her words in particular were really trying to get fashion schools and big fashion houses to kind of quit this idea of pushing the idea of the fashion designer, and for us to start looking at promoting great shoemakers, promoting great bag makers, promoting other design practices as opposed to just the fashion designer. So what is seen right now as an appetite for African aesthetic, I think, is more just an extension of what she was already speaking about, 4 years ago. And again, due to the fact that Africa is now the cool kid and everyone's interested in us, for us to offer up the things that seemed very everyday to us, it's us potentially playing into what the market wants, which is great, depending on which side of the coin you're sitting on. So like I say, I don't want to be the Debbie Downer. I think there's always value in knowing how to tap into what the market needs. I just personally wonder, and again, you look at how trends work. I would just like to encourage us to not play into it according to a trend need, according to feeding to what the market is currently desiring alone. So again, my challenge, fashion schools like Stadio, making bag design a prominent subject, making shoemaking a prominent subject. So it's not just like 3 years of learning how to design garments alone. For students when they're entering first year, and I don't know how much the curriculum's changed since I entered, but a student entering at first year level already, that student being asked, what are your curiosities looking like? And for the system itself to facilitate a certain knowing or coming to know of particular practices that won't limit you to just becoming a fashion designer, but for you to learn skill sets that are a little bit more practical, in the sense of what the continent needs first before what the international market might be demanding for. And that will then also come to further sustain our economy as the continent. I mean, when Cyril Ramaphosa finally recognized Thebe after he won LVMH, we kind of sat there going, but there's been an entire fashion system all along. We shouldn't wait for that one name to appear. We should be encouraging our artisans, our creatives to be prominent in their different spaces, but finding new ways of invigorating those different spaces as they stand. So yeah, I think again, my challenge is to the whole industry at large. Who are we centering? Why are we centering those things? We have other trend. I've met Lee Edelkirk. We've got other trend analysts that might give us a different perspective from an African lens, as opposed to us listening to Lee telling us about potentially what the global north is looking for. So I feel like a Debbie Downer, but I do want us to just like rethink where we're getting our thoughts from, who is encouraging us, and why are they encouraging us? It should.
Thank you, Thebe. From my side, you're definitely not a Debbie Downer. I think a sober assessment is always welcome, especially in the higher education space. We're all about critical thinking. And I think we've run out of time, so I'm just going to request maybe a closing comment from first Anissa and then Annette. And we have no questions from the audience, so we can leave it at that. Anissa?
Okay, so my closing statement is, I think because the world is looking at us while we're trying to figure out the ecosystem and why things work the way they work, we must still capitalize on the fact that the spotlight is on us. I think that because they have run out of ideas, that is opportunity for me. I see it in that way. And I don't know if it's because I've been in the space for so long that now all I see is line sheets and how many orders are coming in, and the business still going to be running. I will work with what works and adapt in a way that I don't lose the brand identity, but I also don't lose myself within the market. And it will always be a balancing act. Unfortunately, we can't only focus on one thing and then leave the other thing. And, you know, at the end of the day, we need to participate with what is happening globally. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Annette?
We all do this to earn a living, you know, so it's not the passion for fashion, it's to earn a living. It's our day-to-day business. So in that sense, look at it, what the opportunities are for people to work in fashion. Like, I'm agreeing with Thebe, you know, like not to put everything on the designer, not even all on a bag or on a shoe designer, but there are so many other things needed in the value chain to make it all happen. And I think for me, like coming from the Northern Hemisphere, you know, it's possibly the biggest challenge for designers here on the continent to find a good team, you know, to find people who have who are working in fashion in a certain position to fulfill certain tasks. So I find that's the biggest challenge, because most of the young creatives, also people reaching out to us, you know, they want to be designers and not necessarily have not experienced necessarily the whole value chain. That's one point. But for designers, and Anissa, I'm not sure if you experience that. I can just talk for the ones I'm working with. It's so difficult to basically grow your home base and have a solid structure, so you know you as a designer can then concentrate on design. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for fashion students, you know, to find positions, to find also their real gift in the industry, you know. So it might not be design, it might be like styling, you know, or it might actually be writing or research, manufacturing. So to look at all those facets and all those like things which are needed to bring the whole value chain together. I think that's very important for brands to work with.
Thank you so much, Annette. Wow, I can just say it's been an absolutely wonderful time talking to our experts. You've brought perspectives from the global north, combine it with the global south. There's been critique, there's been real incisive insights into the realities. It is a business, and I think what I took away from it is that we all ultimately want there to be the building of a home base. And I think that stood out to me, and that's something that we will encourage with our students. On that note, we are over time, so I'd like to say, on behalf of Stadio School of Fashion, a big thank you to Anissa, to Siviwe and Annette. You are obviously always welcome at our campuses. We welcome you as a part of our fashion community, leaders and thought leaders in our fashion community. I want to thank you for making time for us and the audience this evening. I want to thank the moderators, Louise and Melissa, for leading the procession. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us in what is the last spring session. We will be sharing this information with our fashion community, and I wish you all a lovely evening. Thank you.